Welcome to this new episode of Death Row Stories. Today, you will hear the story of Texas death row inmate Demon Dupree Blunson, as on May 7, 2025, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals released its opinion on his case.
Today, I'm telling his story and what the court had to say about it. Demon Dupree Blunson was born in November 1975. In 2001, he was arrested for drug trafficking in El Campo, Texas. Later, he worked as a cooperating informant for the El Campo Police. At the time, the police chief described him as intelligent, respectful, and able to follow instructions. In 2002, he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Experts later debated whether he also suffered from schizophrenia or was feigning mental illness. In the weeks before the murders, he was using dating websites under a false name. He was 36 years old. A woman he met online described him as articulate, socially competent, and not visibly mentally ill during their time together, which was about 10 days before the murders. He told her he wanted to be an underwear model, and she photographed him posing for that aspiration. Blunson was in a relationship with 28-year-old Brandy Cerny. They had a child together, and he was helping raise her older son from a previous relationship. He was last seen with her and the children on June 17, 2012, at a church service in Wharton, Texas. The next day, on Monday, June 18, 2012, Brandy Cerny failed to show up for work in El Campo, Texas. Alarmed by her absence, her family reported her and her 21-month-old and 6-year-old sons missing. The El Campo police began searching for the family and Brandy's Jeep Liberty throughout the day, but there was no sign of them. The following morning, Detective Holder traced Brandy's debit card to a Holiday Inn in Laredo. When he called, the front desk clerk confirmed Brandy was registered in room 1408. Acting on his own, the clerk went up, knocked on the door, and asked for Brandy. A man's voice answered, saying she wasn't there, so the clerk returned to the desk. Meanwhile, Detective Holder requested a welfare check from the Laredo police. Officer Reyes arrived and, with the clerk, knocked repeatedly, identifying themselves as both hotel staff and police. From inside, they heard a man mumbling, children whimpering and crying, and water running. Still, no one answered the door. Fearing for the children's safety, Officer Reyes had the clerk use a master key, but the door was blocked by a security chain. Backup arrived, and when maintenance came with bolt cutters, they prepared to cut the chain. Only then did the situation erupt. As maintenance worked to open the door, a single gunshot blasted through it, the bullet passing just inches from the officers. Everyone scrambled for cover. Less than a minute later, 4 more shots echoed from inside the room, raising the tension to a breaking point. A tactical response followed. When police finally breached the room, they discovered Demon Dupree Blunson inside. One of the boys had been fatally shot in the forehead. The other was gravely injured with a gunshot to the head and later died at the hospital. A handgun was found in the room. Blunson was injured but conscious. Later that evening, Brandy's body was found in El Campo in a shack on property owned by Blunson's father. She had been fatally shot and was in an advanced state of decomposition. According to the medical examiner, the condition of her body, accelerated by the summer heat, suggested she had been killed on Sunday, June 17th, the day before the boys were murdered. Forensic experts later confirmed that the same 9mm handgun recovered from the hotel room had been used in all 3 killings. Blunson was charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault on police officers. In 2016, a jury convicted him and sentenced him to death for the murders of the children.
Now, let's talk about the Court of Criminal Appeals decision.
In a direct appeal reviewed automatically in Texas death penalty cases, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals upheld Blunson's convictions for capital murder, but it overturned his death sentences and ordered a new punishment trial. The most serious problem involved how the jury was guided on the mitigation issue. Under Texas law, during the sentencing phase of a capital trial, jurors are asked whether there are sufficient mitigating circumstances to justify a sentence of life instead of death. The law does not require unanimous agreement to answer yes to this question. In fact, a single juror can vote for life imprisonment based on mitigation. But in Bluntson's case, the jury instructions were wrong. They told jurors that all 12 of them had to agree that there were no mitigating circumstances. In reality, that's not what Texas law requires, and putting that kind of burden on the jury was a serious legal error. The instructions also wrongly suggested that Bluntson had the burden of proving mitigation. That's not the law. In Texas, there is no requirement for a defendant to prove mitigating circumstances. The decision lies entirely with the jury's judgment based on all the evidence. The court concluded that these two missteps in the instructions were not minor. They caused egregious harm and undermined the reliability of the death penalty determination. In other words, the jury might have chosen life imprisonment had they been properly instructed. That was enough to warrant reversal of the death sentences and a new punishment phase. In addition to the sentencing issues, Bluntson raised 31 other points of error challenging everything from his mental fitness to stand trial, to how he was represented by his lawyers, to whether police had obtained evidence legally. The court reviewed each of those claims in detail, but ultimately found that none of them justified overturning his conviction. During the appeal, the court paused the process and sent the case back to the trial court to determine, looking back in time, whether Bluntson had actually been competent during his 2016 trial. After reviewing extensive records and hearing from both lay and expert witnesses, a jury in 2022 found that he had been competent. Bluntson challenged the fairness of this retrospective review, but the Court of Criminal Appeals ruled the process was thorough and reliable, relying on substantial evidence from the time of the original trial. Ultimately, the Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed Bluntson's guilt, but sent the case back to the lower court for a new sentencing trial, one that must be free of the flawed instructions that tainted the original death sentence.
Thank you for watching Death Row Stories on YouTube or for listening it on your favorite podcast platform. I hope this new kind of storytelling spoke to you. Let us know in the comments, and please share it. The text in this episode is based on official judicial records. The images you can see on the YouTube video are artistic interpretations and do not depict real people or events exactly as they occurred.